The city of Lyon, 1943. The world was stitched together with fear and hope, like a frayed tapestry in the hands of fate. Shadows of German occupation stretched across the cobblestones, and the great Saône River ran silent under curfew. In the dusk, the air was thick with the acrid tang of coal smoke and the whisper of secrets. Jeanne, a schoolteacher with chestnut hair pinned in a tidy roll, moved swiftly along the Rue Victor Hugo, her satchel bouncing against her hip, her heart racing with the clandestine news she carried. The war had twisted time, making days feel like years and hope as fragile as the last petal on a dying rose. Jeanne's world was reduced to ration coupons, blackouts, and hurried glances at soldiers on street corners. Yet even here, in a city occupied and watched, life forced itself to continue. She clung to her work at the school, teaching children whose fathers had vanished into the east or the underground. Each lesson was an act of defiance, a small rebellion against the darkness pressing in. It was on such an evening, with dusk gathering like a bruise, that she first saw him. He was standing in the doorway of a crumbling atelier, his uniform ill-fitting, hair cropped too short, a satchel slung across his shoulders. His eyes, pale blue, almost glassy, met hers for a heartbeat too long. Jeanne's breath caught. He was not French. He wore the field grey of the Wehrmacht, but something in the way he stood, hesitant and awkward, seemed to betray him. She moved on, but the image of the young soldier lingered. That night, as she wrote her lesson plans by candlelight, Jeanne tried to banish the memory. Lyon was full of Germans now, their boots echoing on stone, their language harsh against the soft lilt of French. She had promised herself never to look at them as men, only as the enemy, faceless, distant, yet his eyes haunted her. Days passed, the city growing colder as autumn seeped into the bones of old buildings. On market day, Jeanne queued for bread amid the mutter of women, their baskets half empty. She saw him again, this time in civilian clothes, his hands trembling as he counted unfamiliar coins at a stall. Their eyes met across the crowd. He hesitated, then approached, his voice low and careful. "Excuse me, mademoiselle, could you help me?" Jeanne stiffened, but something in his tone, a vulnerability, an uncertainty, disarmed her. "You're not from here," she said quietly in German, surprising them both. He flushed, glancing over his shoulder. "No, I'm not. I'm called Lukas. I was assigned to Lyon last month. My French is not so good." She considered him, the cautious lines around his mouth, the way he shrank from the gaze of the market women. "You shouldn't be here alone," she whispered. "It's not safe." Lukas nodded, his gaze dropping. "I know, but I don't want to be what they want me to be." He pressed a ration card into her hand, fingers brushing hers, a brief, electric touch. "Please." Jeanne hesitated, then took pity. She helped him navigate the market, translating, warning him when to lower his voice. As they parted, he offered her a shy, grateful smile. "Thank you," he said in halting French, "for your kindness." She watched him go, her heart warring with her conscience. In wartime, kindness could be a dangerous thing. That winter was the harshest Lyon had seen in decades. Snow fell in heavy, silent sheets, muffling the city's wounds. Jeanne found herself thinking of Lukas, wondering if he was cold, if he missed home. She told herself it was only curiosity, but the lie tasted bitter. The next time she saw him was in the schoolyard after the children had gone. He was leaning against the gate, shivering, his uniform collar turned up. "I shouldn't be here," Lukas said, his breath clouding in the air, "but I needed to see someone who wasn't afraid of me." Jeanne hesitated, glancing at the empty street. "Why me?" He looked at her, and in that moment, the enemy vanished. "Because you see me. Not just the uniform." They walked together along the river, their steps careful and deliberate. Lukas told her of his home in Bavaria, of apple trees and a sister who sang in the church choir. He spoke of how the war had come for him, how he had tried to disappear in a sea of faces, only to be swept along by orders he never wanted. Jeanne listened, her heart softening against her better judgment. "I despise what's happening here," Lukas confessed, voice raw. "But I am trapped. If I run, they will find me. If I stay, I must be complicit." Jeanne reached for his hand, her fingers trembling. "We are all prisoners of something." Their meetings became a lifeline, a stolen hour in a world unraveling. They met in shadowed alleys, under the guise of dusk, sharing secrets and laughter that felt almost forbidden. Lukas brought her scraps of chocolate, smuggled from army stores. Jeanne gave him books, their pages filled with poetry and hope. In those moments the war receded, replaced by something fragile and precious. Yet the world pressed in. The resistance grew bolder, their sabotage more daring. German patrols swept the city, and suspicion fell on anyone who spoke to the occupiers without fear. Jeanne's neighbors grew silent, their eyes hard. Rumors spread, of informers, of sudden arrests. One night, Jeanne returned home to find a note slipped under her door. Be careful who you trust. Fear became her constant companion. She tried to end things with Lukas, telling him it was too dangerous, but when she saw the hurt in his eyes, she faltered. Do you regret meeting me? He asked quietly. Jeanne shook her head, tears stinging. No, I regret the world that forces us to hide. As spring crept back into Lyon, hope flickered at the edges of the city. The Allies had landed in Italy. The tide, people whispered, was turning. But with hope came desperation. The Gestapo's grip tightened and collaborators prowled the streets. Jeanne and Lukas became experts in caution, never meeting in the same place twice, always speaking in coded phrases. One evening, as the city rang with the distant thunder of artillery, Lukas arrived at their rendezvous pale and shaken. They are watching me, he whispered. I think someone suspects. Jeanne's heart seized. She led him into the shadowed courtyard of a church, her voice urgent. You must leave. Tonight, there's a train to Geneva. A contact can get you across the border. He shook his head. And you? What about you? She pressed his hand, fierce. I will be safe. But you, if they find you, they will kill you. Or worse. He gripped her shoulders, desperation in his eyes. Come with me. We can start over somewhere far from this. Jeanne's longing warred with duty. The schoolchildren, her ailing mother, the city that needed her. Yet the pull of Lukas's hope was almost unbearable. I can't, she whispered, tears spilling. Not yet. They clung to each other in the darkness, the church bells tolling midnight. Promise me you'll survive, Lukas pleaded. That you'll find happiness even if it's not with me. Jeanne nodded, her voice breaking. And you, promise you'll remember me. He kissed her, soft, desperate, aching. Then he slipped into the night, his silhouette swallowed by fog. The days that followed were a blur of fear and longing. News came in fragments. The resistance had sabotaged a train. A German officer had disappeared. Jeanne waited, breathless, for word of Lukas. She wrote him letters she never sent, tucking them into the pages of her books. Each day she scanned the faces in the street, hoping, dreading. The war ground on, relentless. In August 1944, Lyon was liberated. The city erupted in joy and mourning, the scars of occupation still raw. Jeanne joined the crowds in the square, watching as the last German convoy retreated. She allowed herself a single silent prayer for Lukas, wherever he was. The years passed, slow and uneven as healing. Jeanne rebuilt her life, teaching children the stories of liberty and courage. She never married, though suitors called. Sometimes, late at night, she would take out the faded ration card Lukas had given her, tracing the worn edges with trembling fingers. Then, in the spring of 1948, a letter arrived, postmarked from Switzerland. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but inside was a single sheet, written in careful, halting French. Dearest Jeanne, if this finds you, know that I am alive. I made it across the border, thanks to your courage. I have built a quiet life here, working with refugees. Each day I think of you, the teacher who saw the man, not the uniform. I hope you have found peace. If ever you wish to see me, you will find me at the address below. With all my heart, Lukas. Tears blurred the words, hope blooming like the first crocus after winter. Jeanne traveled to Geneva, her heart pounding with each mile. She found Lukas in a small apartment above a bakery, older, thinner, but with the same gentle eyes. Their reunion was quiet, bittersweet, filled with stories of loss and survival. They never spoke of forever. The war had taught them the folly of promises. Instead, they cherished each day. A walk by the lake, quiet meals, laughter in the shadow of memory. In a world rebuilt from ashes, they found each other again, not as fugitives, but as survivors. Their love, forged in the crucible of war, was no longer forbidden. It was a testament to hope, to the courage of seeing beyond borders, uniforms, and fear. Years later, when Jeanne's hair had turned silver and Lukas's hands trembled with age, they would sit by the window and watch the world go by. Sometimes they would speak of Lyon, of the river and the market and the night when love crossed a border no army could ever patrol. And in the hush between words, they would remember how in the darkest of times, a single act of kindness had changed the course of two lives, and perhaps, in some small way, the world. In the end, that was the miracle. Not that love survived the war, but that it was born in spite of it, a fragile, stubborn thing persisting like wildflowers in the cracks of ruined streets. Jeanne and Lukas became part of the city's story, woven into the fabric of Lyon, a reminder that even in the shadow of hatred, humanity endures. They never forgot the cost. They carried the memories of friends lost, of choices that could never be undone. But they also carried the knowledge that when love crossed borders in the middle of war, it left a mark no victory parade could erase. And so in the golden light of late afternoon, Jeanne would rest her hand on Lukas's, and together they would watch the children playing in the square, their laughter bright and unburdened. The world had changed. The future, uncertain as ever, beckoned. But for now they had each other, and that was enough, because love, once kindled, has a way of enduring, even when the world tries its hardest to snuff it out. And in the echoes of their story, others would find the courage to hope, to resist, and to reach for something more. A love that crossed borders, a love that refused to die, a love, above all, that taught them to believe in tomorrow, no matter how impossible it seemed.